Greetings, adventurers. You're listening to The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood with me, Professor Atwood. I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to tell you about my latest journey. Don't worry, it's a safe space. I'll handle all the danger for you. I designed these stories to help you relax, chill anxiety, and go to sleep. Maybe they'll even put a smile on your face, even if it's a sleepy smile. So please, settle in, relax, and prepare to quietly drift off with me to parts known, unknown, and even some places in between. Comfortable? Very well. Let's get underway. Good evening, adventurers. I hope you're doing well. I also hope you're all cozy and settled in because tonight I'm going to tell you about my rescue mission in the fake ancient temple ruins on the nefarious Professor P's hidden fake volcanic island. And, well, to be honest, I wasn't sure what challenges he had in store for me. I would have to be on my guard. Now, as you remember, I had learned Professor P had kidnapped my assistant, Bradley, and his girlfriend/mercenary, Delores, from their vacation in Niagara Falls. This happened right after I had completed Science Challenge number 2, creating a hovering personal transport vehicle for minions. Now, as you remember, there were 3 science challenges in total, which is of course why I came to this fake volcanic island lair in the first place. If I completed all 3, Professor P would tell me the whereabouts of my missing mentor, Professor Sampson, who went missing years ago. But there was more to it than that, and more mysteries than I was anticipating. Things took an incredibly unexpected turn, as Professor P granted me a day off after he and his girlfriend, Julia, who was also my ex-wife, went on a little vacation. Turns out, it wasn't a vacation at all, and he had kidnapped my assistant, Bradley, and his girlfriend, Delores. They were imprisoned in fake ancient temple ruins on the other side of the island, opposite of the fake volcano. I had begun the journey to the temple and had stopped to have lunch by the waterfall to catch my breath and collect my thoughts. But now, it was time to continue on. But before I tell you about my rescue mission to the fake ancient temple ruins across the hidden island lair of the Infinite Science Cabal, I want to tell you about a few things. First of all, we want to thank you again for all your support and for being here and listening to our stories. It's much appreciated, and we're also warmed by all the wonderful and supportive reviews you've been posting. Also, don't forget there are 2 types of shows in the podcast high-speed show feed. There are the regular episodes, such as what you're listening to right now, and Professor Atwood's Sleepscapes to give you more adventures per month. These sleepscapes are pulled directly from my adventures, with all the music and sounds we collect on our journeys. We then remix and remaster them and make them longer, so you can create your own adventure in your mind as you settle in and drift off to sleep. As always, don't forget to rate and review the show and maybe post about the show, as that's how other adventurers find us. And if you want more info, merchandise, and donation and ad-free Patreon subscription options, you can always go to whitecatentertainment.com. All right, now let's get back to the story. I just finished my lunch by the island waterfall and was about a 2-hour walk away from the ancient temple ruins. There, I would find Bradley and Delores, and quite possibly an insidious trap or 2 to impede my progress. I made sure I collected all of my lunch debris. You know, leave nothing but footprints, even when you're on your evil science nemesis's island lair. I started walking towards the ancient temple ruins. From a distance, it looked like the minions had done a pretty good job with them. They had just the right amount of crumbling to them, and ancient mysterious statues lined the entrance, which were big enough to see even from this distance, although I got a better look at them through my binoculars. I started walking on the island plateau towards the temple. The jungle canopy was now behind me, and the sun was bright and warm. But since there was no shade, I'll admit it was getting a bit too warm. It was time to pull out my custom umbrella number 3. Now, custom umbrella number 3 was a unique design, as they all were. It was a little bit heavier because it was a cooling umbrella. Well, I mean, technically an umbrella that shades you from the sun is a parasol, but I wasn't going to call it that. Anyway, I opened up the umbrella and flipped the cooling switch. Small fans and a mini compressor blew the cooler air from just below the umbrella canopy, and robust solar panels on the outside of the canopy powered the cooling power of the umbrella. I mean, it wasn't like being in an air-conditioned room, but it was just strong enough to keep the heat edge off, and it went a long way to making me more comfortable for the remainder of this journey to the fake temple ruins. The view from the top of the plateau was spectacular, and I could see for miles across the calm blue ocean in any direction. As I continued my walk towards the ancient temple, I thought about umbrella number 3, my cooling umbrella. As simple as it was a bit difficult to get the right balance of efficiency and weight, as you can't hold a heavy umbrella up for extended periods of time. That's why I built in an adjustable shoulder support for when your arms get tired and you still have a ways to go in the hot sun. Air conditioning has always been a wonderful invention and has gone a long way to make us all feel more comfortable in those hot summer months. Or, of course, if you live all year near the equator. Now, air conditioning, often abbreviated as AC, is the process of removing heat from an enclosed space to achieve a more comfortable interior temperature, and in some cases also controlling the humidity of internal air. Air conditioning can be achieved using a mechanical air conditioner, quote, or by other methods, including passive cooling and ventilative cooling. Now, obviously my umbrella was not an enclosed space, which, yes, I understood, reduced the efficiency of the cooling umbrella, but I took these factors into consideration in the design and created a targeted funnel airflow system, so while yes, the cooling benefit diffuses quickly, it's robust enough to really make a difference for that small cooling funnel area. And I liked the color. It was a bright, happy blue to blend in with the sky. Now, air conditioning is a member of a family of systems and techniques that provide heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, abbreviated as HVAC. Heat pumps are similar in many ways to air conditioners, but use a reversing valve to allow them both to heat and to cool an enclosed space. Granted, I had a heating umbrella, number 2, but it would have been impractical to combine them, of course. It would have been far too heavy and cumbersome. Anyway, air conditioners, which typically use vapor compression refrigeration, range in size from small units used in vehicles or single rooms to massive units that can cool large buildings. Air source heat pumps, which can be used for heating as well as cooling, are becoming increasingly common in cooler climates. Cooling in traditional air conditioner systems is accomplished using the vapor compression cycle, which uses a refrigerant's forced circulation and phase change between gas and liquid to transfer heat. The vapor compression cycle can occur within a unitary or packaged piece of equipment, or within a chiller that is connected to terminal cooling equipment, such as a fan coil unit in an air handler on its evaporator side, and heat rejection equipment such as a cooling tower on its condenser side. An air source heat pump shares many components with an air conditioning system, but includes a reversing valve, which allows the unit to be used to heat as well as cool a space. Now, like I said, obviously that wouldn't all fit in an umbrella, so I had to customize and make some compromises along the way. But as I've said earlier, I was quite pleased with the results, and I was perfectly happy with having a heating umbrella and a cooling umbrella and having them separate. Air conditioning equipment will reduce the absolute humidity of the air processed by the system if the surface of the evaporator coil is significantly cooler than the dew point of the surrounding air. An air conditioner designed for an occupied space will typically achieve a 30 to 60% relative humidity in the occupied space. Now, most modern air conditioning systems feature a dehumidification cycle during which the compressor runs. At the same time, the fan is slowed to reduce the evaporator temperature and condense more water. A dehumidifier uses the same refrigeration cycle but incorporates both the evaporator and the condenser into the same air path. The air first passes over the evaporator coil, where it is cooled and dehumidified before passing over the condenser coil, where it is warmed again before it is released back into the room. Well, I was outside, so there was no need or even a use for a dehumidification cycle. My system was more about refilling dry ice packs, mini condensers, and fans, and it did the trick. Now, I was nearing the temple, and even though the sun was quite warm, the air around me was pleasant thanks to custom umbrella number 3. As I got closer, more details came into focus, and they were, well, how can I put this? Beyond ostentatious. The fake volcano was bad enough, but now Professor P had installed crumbling ruins flanked by statues of himself. And of course, those weren't crumbling and were perfectly preserved. There were 4 of them, and they were all of Professor P in various poses straight out of mythology. And not just one mythology. He couldn't even be bothered to stay in one narcissistic, ostentatious statue lane. There were statues of Professor P as Zeus, Thor, Neptune, and even Ra, the Egyptian sun god. I wanted to laugh, but I was too irritated. I passed the statue slowly, but then I heard a soft click. As Delores, the mercenary/security officer, knows well, it's the soft clicks you have to watch for. The loud clicks mean you're supposed to know something is happening. The soft ones, well, let's just say it's time to watch out. I heard the soft click and immediately got off my feet and rolled to one side. Sure enough, each statue of Professor P had mechanically activated and thrown a spear, and they all landed right where I was previously standing. It was another warning. It was an obvious trap, and Professor P knew I would detect it. He was still toying with me, and frankly, I was getting a bit tired of it. Time to rescue my assistant and his girlfriend, and then I would finish these science challenges and put a stop to whatever nefarious plan Professor P was trying to set in motion. I soon approached the entrance of the ancient temple ruins. It was quiet on top of the plateau, and I could barely hear the sounds of the jungle anymore, or even the ocean waves gently crashing into the coastline or rock face. All I could hear was a gentle wind as I approached. Taking a moment to look at the ruins, the minions did an excellent job. It was clearly weathered. They had brought in some vines from the jungle canopy to grow into the rock, where there was shade, and all in all, they succeeded in creating an ancient jungle temple vibe. It was also covered with symbols, some ancient, some science-related, some Professor P related, and some that seemed to be just random shapes. But if I knew Professor P, everything had a purpose, and I would soon find out what it was. The ruins provided some shade, so I closed custom umbrella number 2, the cooling umbrella. The sun was setting anyway, as I had gotten here at dusk. I wanted to make better time, but that couldn't be helped now. Soon I would need my lanterns to explore the ruins, but not quite yet. The light of magic hour was still illuminating the temple, and I could see just fine for now. But I had hoped I would have heard Bradley or Delores by now, but I hadn't. It was still very quiet. I became even more irritated and thought that Professor P better not have been lying about kidnapping Bradley and Delores. Okay, so quickly after that it occurred to me that I really shouldn't be too upset if my assistant and his girlfriend weren't really kidnapped. Either way, I was getting tired of Professor P's games. I crossed the threshold and walked through an arch that was still standing. When I entered the ruins, it looked like I was in the remains of a great hall with a large wooden table and chairs in the center. Now, I know they were supposed to be long abandoned, but inside it looked like a few corners were cut on the aging process, as the banquet table and wooden chairs looked quite nice. But there were also these same symbols everywhere as well. They were on every wall and on the door. Some were discernible and some were not. I walked further into the ruins and to the far end of the Great Hall. It was still quite expansive. As I reached the far end of the temple ruins, I began to hear the faint hum of electronics. Not something you normally hear in ancient ruins. And there seemed to be some cleverly hidden mood ambient lighting, so looks like I wouldn't need my lanterns after all. Now, as I got closer, I noticed the far wall was also filled with these symbols, from science to mathematics, to ones about Professor P showing how great he was, to ones I could not identify. As I got closer, I saw that the wall was not a wall, but a giant screen. The image shifted from the symbols to an image of Professor P. He saw me through a hidden camera, smiled, and began speaking to me. I commend you, Professor Atwood, for making it to the temple. Where are Bradley and Delores? I demanded. They are safe and comfortable, I assure you, he replied. The screen changed, and I saw Bradley and Delores, and, well, okay, yes, they did look quite comfortable. They were in more of a lounge than a holding cell. There was a fully catered spread, most likely from Chef Chet, comfortable couches, video game cabinets, and a flat-screen TV. They were quietly lounging around and watching Stranger Things, so they must have had Wi-Fi as well. Of course, Bradley and Delores were more than capable, and they had confidence in me. They saw their kidnapping as more of an unexpected inconvenience, rather than something to really worry about. I appreciated their level-headedness and their confidence in me. The screen changed back to Professor P, and I had to reluctantly agree that they did indeed look comfortable. Professor P offered a slight bow and said that he was not a barbarian. This was just a little more motivation to help me with the third science challenge. And there it was. This elaborate ruse culminating in a kidnapping was all just the lead-up to the third science challenge. Chef Chet had warned me about challenges that were hidden, or that weren't challenges at all, and now, here we were. Professor P continued and said as a bonus, when I completed the third science challenge successfully, Bradley and Delores would be freed. Not that I had any intention of failing, but even if I didn't succeed, unlikely, I knew Bradley and Delores could take care of themselves. I wasn't worried. Plus, I knew this was all science villain theater, something Professor P loved. His focus was on me and this challenge, and the ulterior motive behind it, which I hadn't quite figured out yet. He didn't really care that much about Bradley and Delores, but all that being said, it was time for me to complete this final challenge and free them, and stop Professor P. So yes, there was a lot to do, and I was eager to get started. Professor P told me to look around and notice the symbols all over the temple. I said I had already noticed them. He said there was a combination lock leading to the kidnappee lounge. Yes, that's what he called it. All I had to do was figure out the combination lock from these hundreds of symbols, some unrecognizable, and I would complete the challenge successfully. Oh, and he added, don't look for a pattern. My final hint to you is that there are no hints. It's a completely random combination. Good day, Professor. And with that, the large screen blinked out, and I was on my own in the fake hidden temple, surrounded by symbols, and a large digital symbol lock on an equally large door in the corner. That was my goal. That was the third science challenge. But how to do it? I thought about it, and in order to rescue Bradley and Delores, I would have to employ cryptanalysis. Cryptanalysis is the term used for the study of methods for obtaining the meaning of encrypted information without access to the key normally required to do so. In other words, it's the study of how to crack encryption algorithms or their implementations. I had no keys and no clues to go on. I needed to crack Professor P's code. Cryptanalysis refers to the process of analyzing information systems in order to understand hidden aspects of the systems. Cryptanalysis is used to breach cryptographic security systems and gain access to the contents of encrypted messages, even if the cryptographic key is unknown. In addition to mathematical analysis of cryptographic algorithms, cryptanalysis includes the study of side-channel attacks that do not target weaknesses in the cryptographic algorithms themselves, but instead exploit weaknesses in their implementation. I would, of course, keep this in mind, because, well, finding good minion programmers was difficult, as the good ones were expensive and, well, often resent being treated like minions. I wondered if this was a weakness I could exploit. Anyway, even though the goal has always been the same, the methods and techniques of cryptanalysis have changed drastically through the history of cryptography, adapting to increasing cryptographic complexity, ranging from the pen and paper methods of the past, through machines like the British bombs and Colossus computers at Bletchley Park in World War II, to the mathematically advanced, computerized schemes of the present. Methods for breaking modern crypto systems often involve solving carefully constructed problems in pure mathematics, the best known being integer factorization. Encryption has been used throughout history to send important military, diplomatic, and commercial messages, and today is very widely used in computer networking to protect email and internet communication. The goal of cryptanalysis is for a third party, a cryptanalyst, to gain as much information as possible about the original or plain text, attempting to break the encryption to read the ciphertext, and learning the secret key so future messages can be decrypted and read. A mathematical technique to do this is called a cryptographic attack. Cryptographic attacks can be classified based on what type of information the attacker has available. As a basic starting point, it is normally assumed that, for the purposes of analysis, the general algorithm is known. This is Shannon's maxim: the enemy knows the system. This is a reasonable assumption in practice. Throughout history, there are countless examples of secret algorithms falling into wider knowledge, variously through espionage, betrayal, and reverse engineering. And on occasion, ciphers have been broken through pure deduction. For example, the German Lorenz cipher and the Japanese Purple Code, and a variety of classic schemes, of course. The results of cryptanalysis can also vary in usefulness. Cryptographer Lars Knudsen classified various types of attack on block ciphers according to the amount and quality of the secret information that was discovered. For example, like an academic attack, they're often used against weakened versions of a crypto system, such as a block cipher or hash function with some rounds removed. Many, but not all, attacks become exponentially more difficult to execute as rounds are added to a crypto system, so it's possible for the full crypto system to be strong, even though reduced round variants are weak. Nonetheless, partial breaks that come close to breaking the original crypto system may mean that a full break will follow. The successful attacks on DES, MD5, and SHA-1 were all preceded by attacks on weakened versions. In academic cryptography, a weakness or a break in a scheme is usually defined quite conservatively. It might require impractical amounts of time, memory, or known plaintexts. It also might require the attacker to be able to do things many real-world attackers can't. For example, the attacker may need to choose particular plaintexts to be encrypted, or even to ask for plaintexts to be encrypted using several keys related to the secret key. Furthermore, it might only reveal a small amount of information, enough to prove the crypto system imperfect, but too little to be useful to real-world attackers. Finally, an attack might only apply to a weakened version of the cryptographic tools, like a reduced round block cipher, as a step towards breaking the full system. Cryptanalysis has co-evolved together with cryptography, and the contest can be traced throughout the history of cryptography, new ciphers being designed to replace old broken designs and new cryptoanalytic techniques invented to crack the improved schemes. In practice, they are viewed as pretty much two sides of the same coin, like a radar detector and a radar gun. In other words, secure cryptography requires design against possible cryptanalysis. Governments have long recognized the potential benefits of cryptanalysis for intelligence, both military and diplomatic, and established dedicated organizations devoted to breaking the codes and ciphers of other nations. For example, GCHQ and the NSA, organizations which are still very active today. So basically, how does all this relate to science challenge number 3? Well, I had to create a solution to the problem of simply not knowing the door combination. It seemed like a simple problem, but it can be infinitely complex with millions of possible permutations. Luckily, the door was digital, so I would need a way to hack into it, employ a custom program based on cryptanalysis, and get the door to the kidnappee lounge open. I would lean most likely into a side channel attack and exploit the weakness of minion programmers, because I know Professor P would not pay top dollar for, well, anything. I mean, he won't even get Professor Roughhouse a new lab coat. Anyway, I had some work to do. Luckily, I brought my umbrella. Custom umbrella number 4, the CPU umbrella. It had a portable computer built into it. I slid the keyboard out from the canopy and the fabric expanded to form a low-resolution screen the CPU umbrella would project on. I linked my tablet and connected my satellite phone. I now had a computer, Wi-Fi, and satellite power. I was good to go. And I will tell you all about how I hacked the digital ancient temple door and the surprise that came after next time. But before I end this evening's story, I want to talk to you about something. Keeping your cool. I'll admit I don't always keep mine, and I understand it's a common practice. Sometimes when it comes to cool, we misplace it, and sometimes we actually lose it. But sometimes when it comes to your cool, in the middle of misplacing or losing it, you'll notice that the people around you may be keeping theirs. Pay attention to them. I was thinking about Bradley and Delores. I was so worried about them, but they were the actual kidnappees. And while I was certain they weren't fine with it, they were handling it like champs. They were in control. And that's the real story here. When you keep your cool, you keep your control. And when you keep your control, you can usually navigate anything that wants to take away your cool and make you lose it. So by all means, stay motivated and focused, and remember to keep your cool where it belongs, with you. Good night, adventurers.
The Quiet Journeys of Professor Atwood was created, written, and performed by Chris Mancini and produced by White Cat Entertainment. It is a work of fiction. Maybe. Music and sound design by Ron Tansky at rontanskymusic.com. For more info and merchandise, including t-shirts, mugs, and blankets, go to whitecatentertainment.com.